comment. If there's anyone in the audience who wishes to address the council, please come forward, give us your name, where you live, and you have 4 minutes.
Okay, Julian Ruck, 750 15th Street. 4 years ago, almost exactly, I set out on a mission to end food insecurity in this community permanently as soon as possible. And it's that third qualifier that has ruffled some feathers along the way. But I'm confident that today, through conversation in good faith with James Freed, and I know with some private conversation among all of you, we have on the proposal an agreement that makes me feel as though we are sticking true to that as soon as possible. Though we have struggled to get here, had we not struggled and it been just fine, this deal that's up for vote today is where we would be. So I still feel that we are here as soon as possible. Now, when you say end food insecurity in a community permanently, you're going to get people right away. It cannot be done. That you cannot end such things, but you totally can. And then you have some people who say, but if everybody had access to free salad all day, every day, nobody would work anymore and the system would collapse. Maybe in other cities, but, and I mean this sincerely, Port Huron has the strongest work ethic of any community I've ever lived in. And I've lived in over a dozen communities around the country. It gets a bad rap, but the blue-collar workers of this community are what makes this community strong. Not the lake, not a bridge. These are all geographical concerns. And Port Huron, I can tell you with confidence, is not known around the country. It's 0.28% of Michigan's population, 1/4% of 1%. Do you know of cities 1/4 of 1% in other states? No. There's nothing Port Huron is famous for that the people of Port Huron have done themselves. And there has been an increased awareness for food insecurity. And urban gardening has, the Times Herald just did a wonderful article on gardening, sourcing talent from all over the community. And as a result, I feel like we can look at urban gardening and backyard gardening as almost an industry that Port Huron is poised to be a leader of globally. We can become international news like that, as any float down can tell you, right? And this is something we can do. So if we take our work ethic and we put it into our backyards, into our parks, into our schools, into our churches, into our vacant lots, like on this proposal, and produce, the foundation of any community, the sky is the limit. And so from here on, let's do it.
Thank you, Julie.
Approving the lease agreement with First Church of Music, LLC, for the purpose of leasing 3 vacant parcels located on 27th Street in the City of Port Huron for the sole purpose of a community garden.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Councilmember Mosiak, supported by Councilmember Lamb.
Madam Mayor and Council, I sent you a briefing earlier on this agreement. This is a win-win, both addressing the housing shortage and food insecurity. Currently, Mr. Ruck owns 2 properties within the City of Port Huron, which are unbuildable lots in neighborhoods where there's not a lot of buildable lots. And so this agreement is contingent upon the Port Huron Housing Corporation purchasing those 2 lots for the purpose of constructing a home, whether the Port Huron Housing Corporation constructs those homes themselves or with Habitat for Humanity to build 2 new homes within the City of Port Huron. Mr. Ruck and his garden have done a remarkable job producing free food in the City of Port Huron. They're averaging about 4,000 pounds of food that's given away and donated to the community. How do we expand that capacity? How do we onboard more capacity? I met with Mr. Ruck a couple times, emailed with him when he was out traveling across the country. We have identified 3 parcels off 27th Street, which will allow him to expand capacity and deliver food and produce to the south side of the community. Dovetailing into that tonight, we just had a briefing from the Neighborhood Improvement Authority that the number 1 and number 2 priorities identified in their 225 respondent community feedback was food access and food insecurity. And so it's kind of ironic that we are getting the briefing from NIA talking about food security and then getting this opportunity to partner with Mr. Ruck on this expansion and a relocation of Polly's. Same going to be Polly's Place, maintain the name Polly's Place, but a new location. Just to go over the bullet points of the agreement, is a $1 lease for 10 year, up to 10 years. It's permitted for community garden use. He will have to abide by the standards of our zoning. We will move 100 yards of soil off of Polly's Place. So Mr. Ruck has cultivated some pretty incredible soil at Polly's Place. We don't want to let that go to waste. So we'll move 100 yards of that soil to the new location to help seed and start his new garden. It will be used for, again, a housing development, the 2 current lots, and will be used for the sole purpose of a community garden.
Thank you. And thank you for working with Julian. I know that it's been a long time. And actually, this is something that you and I talked about possibly doing well over a year ago, but with everything that kind of got mixed up there, it didn't happen. So I'm glad it's finally come to a fruition and you've been able to make an agreement.
Yeah, I do want to thank the mayor. The mayor played a huge role behind the scenes in pulling this off. Mr. Shouty worked hard on getting us to this point. I want to thank Councilman Pemberton, Mosherak, and Hernandez, who really helped say that they supported this and wanted to help Mr. Ruck. Quietly behind doors is saying, how can we help Julian? How can we make this happen? And so I do appreciate the silent partners who are there supporting this.
Is there any questions? Haven't approved it yet?
Might be too soon to clap, right? Mayor Rupp?
Yes,
I
Councilmember Pemberton.
Appreciate Mr. Freed mentioning the kind of meetings we had, but I do feel the need to be an out loud proponent here, because there was a day that from this very seat I said we will not ever partner with Mr. Ruck. So today I'm meeting those words because I will be voting yes on this. I want to say I think this addresses the needs. I think the issues of being a good neighbor, being able to be in a spot where it works and works well for the neighborhood. I think the buildable lot thing is perfect, and I really am hopeful. I appreciate that you've worked with Mr. Freed and turned a corner together, and that was my biggest concern throughout this whole process. Right, like you said, it's been a long process. We don't need to rehash the past, but I do want to say I felt it was important. If I did say up here, hey, we're not going to do this, I think. Anytime I get to, be wrong up here in a way like this, I appreciate it. This is it's a great opportunity to be wrong about something if we're going to try to work together with any resident on anything. And so I'm hopeful, and I really, like you said, you worded it well, Mr. Ruck, during public comment when you said it's a good faith effort, and I think we're all in on a good faith effort here. Let's try to see if we can figure this out. Absolutely.
Any other comments from anyone?
Mayor Rapp?
Yes, Councilman Mayor Pro Tem.
James outlined, I know Julian come up to the podium and seems to be genuinely happy with this proposal. I just wanted to make sure, since you did outline everything, that there's no miscommunication and both sides know exactly what we're doing moving forward, so that you're happy and we know you're happy before we do something like this and purchase these properties and move you elsewhere.
So I sent Mr. Ruck a copy of the agreement, so he signed off on the agreement beforehand. Mr. Ruck, would you like to address?
I think what can be certain in an uncertain future and world is we spoke of a 10-year lease or ongoing agreement. It's not my intention to be gardening that spot for 10 years. Shiloh Baptist is in the neighborhood, and I actually see them as a great space to inherit what I install once it's viable. It's their neighborhood, and as I expressed to some parishioners there yesterday, I'm a guest in that neighborhood, and I'm fully cognizant of that. I do believe that this is kind of a blank canvas with all the paints. And, you know, I encourage anybody, we actually have a volunteer day at the garden we have at Olenbrooks on April 30th, having a bunch of material brought there, to come out. I'm always in the garden and show up in jeans and a t-shirt, you know, and it's just folks, you know, and I think educating that community. One thing I do want to implement this year is delivery of the free produce throughout the whole community, and then to source neighbors in that neighborhood who want to make $20 and deliver the free produce, and so long as they're trained in the gardening. And I'm hoping that will be the kind of education phase. People get like a 2-hour garden class, and from then on, you know, they're a viable participant. And, you know, I want to get to the point of, you know, selling merch, and I do sincerely believe in today's world of social media and everything, there's more money to be made from growing and giving away produce than trying to sell it. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but we're living in 2024. There are all kinds of new technologies, and urban gardening is a trending subject nationwide. As I said, we could be leaders in that, and I think this is a great place to start. And James and I agreed the most valuable thing about this agreement is the 10-year open-ended conversation. It could be any lot. It could be any, you know, it's the conversation that is the most valuable. So,
Mr. Ruck, for those who are watching tonight who may get excited about hearing about this, how can they contact you if they want to volunteer and work with you?
Facebook primarily. That's my office. So Facebook, Polly's Place on Facebook, Julian Ruck on Facebook. Yeah, that's the best spot.
One of the things Julie and I talked about as well, we had lunch, I don't know when that was, last Wednesday?
Mm-hmm.
By the way, I walked out on my bill, I had to go back and pay it.
I asked them if you paid for
That
the
was
onion
pretty
rings, and they
embarrassing.
said you did.
Very embarrassing. We talked about when, like in my garden, I'm gonna do a 10-foot by 10-foot plot that I'm gonna grow myself. It would be nice to do an educational piece for every person in the community who wants to build a 10-foot by 10-foot plot. I actually asked Julian, what would you plant if you had 10, because I don't know what to plant, I'm just getting into this. One of the things we did during COVID is we gave out more than 15,000 seed packets. And we literally had people emailing the mayor and council photos of their grandkids holding up the produce that they had grown themselves. So that was kind of like a bellwether that there is some serious community interest in gardening if we all had some expertise. So I shared with Julian that I'm hopeful that he shares his expertise almost like a consultant to the neighborhoods on how to grow, how everyone can have a garden in their home, and maybe use Polly's Place as a place where people can come and learn and train so that they go, which I intend to do, and go home and grow their own garden. So Julian, I thank you for your good, kind effort and lunch and meetings.
Yeah, I will say, just as a little peek into the future, the kids that I've taught how to garden that first started learning in the first few years, to them, it's commonplace now. It's an everyday thing. It's not provocative. It's a part of the community they grew up in, and they almost take it for granted. And to be honest, I think that's where we need to head, is that it just be that commonplace. Thanks.
Thank you. And we will take the vote.
Councilmember Lamb?
Yes.
Councilmember Mosrak?
Yes.
Councilmember Pemberton?
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Mayor Rep.
Yes, that concludes our agenda this evening. Is there anything else to come before the? Now you can get the applause.